host Nelson with Cascade Media Group, and tonight we have someone I've known for some time, Mr. Uh, Senator David Haley. Hey, Senator, I called you, asked you to come on the show. You asked me, well, what do you want me to talk about? And I said, there's nothing specific I want you to talk about besides what you want to talk about and what you want to let your constituents and our audience know on what's happening as it relates to politics or whatever's on your mind. So the floor is yours.
You know, Carlos, as you said, you and I go back a long way, and I'm grateful for you to allow me the space here with Cascade Media to talk about not only what's up Kansas City, but what's up right now in America, what time it is. We hear it time and again. We all know what time it is, frankly, if we've been paying any attention, and that you would allow me the opportunity, after all that you've been through in terms of what media means and how crucial it is to share for just a moment is really appreciated, my friend. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing. I say that because somehow we've gotten to the point where we're manipulated as a society to be regressive. And what I mean by that is, unless you're paying attention, and it depends on what medium we get it, you know, whether it's through that which you so uniquely offer, through the media that you have with Cascade, and with What's Up Kansas City and other markets, or through print, which is fading and continuing to fade, or even through social media. Right now, we have become a voter bloc to be, I think, to be highly regarded, but we continue to let ourselves be misdirected and redirected. I don't have to talk about the national race. I don't have to talk about what's going to happen very shortly between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. But where you reach out so uniquely, and for those who may be paying attention, to think that, oh, their vote doesn't count, or their voice is unheard, or it's not going to make any difference either way, and those kind of accolades that are so regressive and so wrong, actually, disturbs me. So I gratefully accept the invitation, because we are becoming consumed by misinformation and apathy, and we can't hear enough that we have to participate all up and down the ballot, not just for president and not just for Congress, not just for state senate. And I'm proud to be a state senator in Kansas. I don't have an opponent on Tuesday, November 5th. I did have a primary and was very fortunate that people gave me one more time. This will be my 30th year in the legislature. But what does a new generation have? What can we say to the new generation? What must we be saying? And through that which you will be interjecting, hopefully through this very impassioned, though short plea right now. Thank you for that, and to stay the course, and to thank you for letting me be a part of it, and maybe to speak to some specific issues if you want beyond the candidacies.
All right. I'd like to speak specifically. Cascade Media Group and Kansas City Business Association, we've been pushing block voting and group economics for our community. What comes about in our community, they say get out to vote, get out to register to vote, this and that. And I say, vote for who, vote for what, and who is accountable when I give them my vote. And the structure that is currently in place, nobody's accountable for when I vote. Now, here on the Missouri side, we have Freedom Inc. And Freedom Inc. has done a yeoman's accomplishment of coming from zero with the founders of Freedom and what Freedom was established to do to give the community a voice. And they used that block vote back when I'm saying the 70s and early 80s. And when we voted then, there was a specific program that the community knew what the return on their investment by voting and getting involved in the political process was going to be. If the establishment wanted to build a new hotel downtown, then our political representation, which was Freedom Inc., would say, we will not go along with that unless we can see how that's going to benefit our community. And our community was such that we still had people in the trades. We had contractors and subcontractors. So if you're going to build a hotel, we need to have a piece of that. So now that comes into economics. And both of us come out of an era where we did have Black businesses in our community. And what has happened, the major corporations have come in and they've squeezed out small business because, and they really don't get replaced with anything. And so when I talk about group economics, I'm like, if you're the superintendent of a school district that has minorities and predominantly people of color, and you're doing with your purchasing agents, and they're bringing, let's say, a milk company's delivering milk. Now, what else are you doing in our community besides supplying milk? Are you doing anything else outside? And that's where group economics comes in. It's like we have a strategy how we're going to spend our money and who we're going to spend our money with. And it's exemplified by the Middle Easterners, how they've taken over basically the 7-Eleven type in our community. And I'm grateful for that because if they weren't there, nobody would be there. But they're organized. And as Malcolm X says, we're just out organized. Now, I'd like you to speak to some of that.
So, I mean, you encapsulate what has been a long-standing commingled relationship as between the electorate and how we bring our candidates to bear and the issues that are going to affect our community. Back to block voting, is that going to be beneficial if we have, especially organizations who are pulling all of these together, all of these candidacies together in one, and how that's going to shake out if and when more than one of the candidates in that electoral system of block voting are elected. The jury's out on that. You know, you reference respected political organization from within the Black community in Kansas City. We don't have any counterpart like that in Kansas City, Kansas. I'm on the Kansas side, but I've often looked at that. And I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Has the trickle down been beneficial to, I mean, and that's something for you and for others who are in there to determine.
I keep referring to the past. I don't think over the last 25 years almost, for at least 2 decades, there hasn't been a trickle down effect. What I have seen, there have been individuals that have been able to be participating in city planning and different elements that the city is growing in. And I go back to, because I used to be in meetings with Bruce Watkins, Sr., and, you know, one of my mentors, and I feel sure one of yours, Carol Cole. When they knew what was going to happen 10 years before it was going to happen, and different people were able to make investments in property and get themselves situated for what's coming down the road 5 years from now. But that has nothing to do with the community. What that has to do, they're representing the community. And so whatever corporation or whatever, to me, these different schemes, they come to the community. Our leadership buys in, but there's no trickle down. There used to be a trickle down. And I give this example. I'm 73, but if we're talking, you and myself are talking about a phone booth, and there's a 20-year-old with us. They don't know what a phone booth is unless they've seen it on the TV. And so they have no reference point. If you're 25 or younger, you've really never seen Black Power in action. Here in Kansas City, 25 years ago, you knew that Black Power was in action, and there wasn't a decision that was going to be made at the county, the city, the state, or anywhere else unless we had a seat at the table, because the two major parties could duke it out, but at the end of the day, that block vote that Freedom had was going to decide who won and who lost. And that was political leadership, and it showed you what you can do if you vote in a block. But back then, there was a clear strategy that was mapped out to the lowest soldier in that organization. Because I don't get out and just do things free. I remember Carol and them had me putting things up on phone poles and door to door and all of that. But I was a contractor, and I seen how that benefited me. And then my subcontractors, they seen how that benefited them. The political trickled down. It's none of that. You don't even have a minority contractors no more. You don't even have these elements, because how the political shift has taken place. The people that's in the seat, they're taking care of themselves. They're not taking care of the community. And a lot of them don't like it when I say these type things, but I really don't care, because they know what's going on and I know what's going on. And our community knows what's going on. And it's time to straighten it up. And I'm not saying that an organization is bad or any of that. It's just time for us to look at things in a new way and basically say, hey, enough is enough. And put some real leadership out here. There's really no resources coming to the Black community. So the few resources that are coming to the Black community, if they're not being utilized so that you can metastasize or you can duplicate and scale up, what are you doing? Floor is yours, Senator.
Well, I mean, of course, those foundational blocks that came about, and yes, thank you for invoking the name of my mentor, Carol Cove, and so many others who were able to also be the intercessory for if we did deliver that block of votes from a particular area or for a particular demographic, sometimes even irrespective of economics. I mean, you can bring in Black wealthy districts and Black impoverished districts, and it would still mean that you were able to deliver. And that was something I think that was the magic back when you talk about when you and I were involved, is you put those building blocks together. You call up Carlos Nelson and say, hey, do you have this part of town, or you get this together? Can you talk to this particular group? It wasn't a mass or blanket distribution as more media is. They were foundational, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. I remember Ivanhoe and what it used to do, how involved it was. I remember Rosemary Lowe and her group. I mean, there were other names. You just call them up and you know that there's going to be X amount of votes if they were on your team.
That's right.
That was out. And then the flip side was if somebody who was a part of that X factor of votes needed something from City Hall or from the county or from wherever the tribunal was, you were able to have that commingled relationship that was so crucial, whether you were a contractor, whether you were looking at some economic development, whatever the case may be. And I think that's lost. Is it lost irrevocably that we have that now? I mean, and what can we do to make it to keep it cohesive, to keep us there? That is something. Well, I've been elected for 30 years. I've been running for 36. But first got elected after running, it's a totally different game. The game has changed in terms of electing now and what the expectations are of that electorate. I think because it's so nebulous right now, we have lost the ability to have that direct impact anymore. I mean, political science that I knew coming through Morehouse, where I studied political science, or coming through Howard Law when I was looking at civic and civil engagement, where we were trying to become young attorneys that were going to be interested in how we are responsive to the needs of a distinct, primarily the Black community. I think all that's changed 40 years later, 45 years later, as we are now. And I really don't know how to call it.
And that's where I come in. A lot of people say they don't know. I put a survey out. I said, do you know how to fix it? Yes or no? Do you know anybody that knows how to fix it? Yes or no? Are you willing to work with someone that knows how to fix it? Yes or no? Problem is, 90% don't know how to do anything, and they're really not willing to work with somebody that knows how to do something. And you can't, as I told you, Melissa Johnson, they've spent about $500,000 or more on her campaign. Do you think any of it came to digital media, a Black company like mine? No. And so when that type stuff happens and your political leadership are behind it, how you, if you know anything about our network, how are you going to spend all of that money and you don't see that some goes to your Black digital network, the only one out here that you've been on and everybody that you know has been on? There's something wrong with that picture. And so when people conquer other races or other countries or other cities, the first thing they do is seize the communications. But that does not seem to be a priority with our leadership because they're really not really trying to get in contact with nobody. And the only way you can have success in our community is to engage the bottom 2/3 of our community that are not engaged and get them engaged. And the only way you really can do that, unless you have $1 billion like these people running for president and you can run these ads and what have you, is digitally. The only person that owns a media company of substantial girth digitally is Cascade Media. And you don't use them because you don't like Mr. Nelson, but every day you buy stuff from the grocery store and from other outlets that the Klan can own, and you don't even know or care. You just buy it. And so it's a lot of things that have to do with our program and our values. And our values have shifted because the new generation of politicians, for the most part, they love power for the sake of using it to ingratiate themselves and their friends. And in my day, Charles Hasley, see, now when your electric gets cut off or what have you, they'll give you some grace. But back then, they just cut your stuff off. And Carol and Charles would call up the electric company, hey, y'all better not cut that off. And they wouldn't cut it off because Freedom had that block. And it just didn't have to. And I renovated the courthouse downtown, the courthouse in Independence, Lake Tacoma Sheriff Station. That would have never happened without that political arm. Archie Welch was able to have a media, a digital like phone company. Jim Houston got the contract for the county commissary and what have you. All that took place because we had political leadership that had a specific mission to get our Black businesses involved in the economic stream of things like everybody else. The largest contractor on the planet is our government.
Jimmy Woodley.
Yeah, honey, yeah, well, hey, David, there are many people I left out, but I'm saying there was a trickle-down effect. Floor is yours.
You called the shot, man. I mean, you just have called back and reminded me of some really, I mean, do I look back or do we look back wistfully in the way things have been or the way things were and what we want to have done? Or, I mean, I don't want to reminisce too much or too long because it's the way things ought to be. That's the way it should be. At least I don't want to be archaic and say in my day, but that's the way it should have been, I think. I mean, it should be, as the way it's always been, that any power structure in a democracy relied upon the electorate that got them elected to be responded to once the election was held. I mean,
and let me cut you off for a minute, Dave.
Supposed to be.
I'm like you. I mentioned that to say in the same context as the phone conversation. If you haven't seen it work, you might not believe it can work. And what I'm saying on that is we've seen it work. But for sure, you can't play today's game with yesterday's score. But if you have seen what history has done, you can recreate it. But you have to be willing to do that.
And to your last point, I don't know, not to sound cliche, but we got some difficult days ahead. I mean, in terms of at the local level and whether or not there's participatory electoral politics at all, it's crucial. It really is crucial that we become engaged. How we reconnect is difficult for me to call. And it really is. How we re-inspire current and subsequent generations to understand the building blocks and foundations for our communities to be more empowered and not to fall for the okie doke, as I think too many of us do, of all ages, is something that I, as now a senior member of the electorate, they said the only one who's been elected consistently longer in the Kansas City metropolitan area than David Haley, myself, is one person. That's the Rev, that Cleaver, that, now with 30 plus years of consistent elected experience, the complete rules have been changed. I mean, in the ways to reach it from what first got us in, because now I run on fumes. The fumes for me are name ID. People say, well, I know David Haley, but I don't know this other candidate running. And I'm sure that Cleaver is the same beneficiary. Name ID. And you just know it's someone that you can call, that you had some affiliation with. And that's not always the best thing, because change can be good. But how do we go from knowing what we've known to knowing what could be beneficial as we emerge into a new generation is something I can't call.
But see, that's what I said on that questionnaire. Do you have a solution? Do you know anybody have a solution? Are you willing to work with somebody? The only way you can do anything with our community is to communicate. Cascade has the only viable Black-owned digital media company that can do that. The only place you can pull more votes, more interest is the bottom 2/3 of the community. And all of them have phones. That's digital communications. So when you're not engaging with the instruments that are used by the community that you're trying to engage with, and you're putting your stuff on, trying to engage with them on Facebook and on Instagram and on this, and you're not building your own institutions that have your people coming to your institution, not to those other people that can control what's going on. I'm giving you closing. We got 30 seconds. Run it down. How you want to close?
Well, I mean, again, I appreciate once again what you do, Carlos Nelson, and what you do so uniquely, and that there's not reciprocity, that for that which we put out and that we struggle to define and to implement, that emanates from us, by us, and our collective, whether it's reciprocal candidates being supportive or entities once elected being, because this doesn't bode well if candidates are irrespective of your contributions and what.
This is brought to you by Kansas City Business Association, working to improve our community.